Alright, what's good everybody? Got 98 Chevy Pickup here, and right off the bat I'm going to tell you straight up, if you have a 99 or newer pickup, that this video doesn't apply for what we're going to do. The parts and the locations of the components are completely different. So if you've got a 99 or newer pickup, click that X up there. Another thing to note is that there are many variations of this truck. You've got short bed, long cab, extended cab, regular cab, short bed, long bed, fuck cab, quad cab. So the measurements that you're going to see here for the lines that I'm using may not be the same for your vehicle. Another thing to note is, chances are if you've got a CK pickup with a brake line leaking in the back, it's probably been replaced before. So what you may see under here could be totally different than what you're going to see under yours. That's just really important to keep in mind, because there's no way I can cover every possible, setup here. You know what I'm saying? I can't just go and just say, you need exactly 115 inches of brake line. It's not going to happen. It's not realistic. You know what I mean? That's why we're going to measure these things out and see exactly what we need. The symptoms that this 98 pickup has is that the brake light stays on with the engine running, and when you put your foot on the brake, the pedal goes all the way to the floor. So let's collect some evidence, see what's going on with this thing. Pop the top off the master cylinder here. What you're going to notice is that the chamber to the front of the truck is completely empty, but we've got plenty of fluid in the chamber to the rear. Now the way that these trucks work, the bigger chamber is for the front brakes and the small chambers for the rear. So right away we can isolate the front from the rear as being the problem. So we kind of have an idea now that the problem lies from the master cylinder to the rear brakes. Got some of the AutoZone's finest .3 brake fluid. We'll just go ahead and top him up. What I do is take a pry bar and push down on the brake pedal while I'm looking underneath the truck, seeing if I can see any kind of a leak. So it's important to note here that what's actually going on up there that you can't see right now is that the fluid's leaking down the frame and dumping out right here. So even though that the leak is originating back up in here behind the gas tank, that shit's just tracking way down here and dumping off. If you look at these stains that run down the frame here, it was actually a lot worse when I got it home the other day after getting the distress call that the brakes weren't working. But based on what I heard and saw, it's coming up from behind the gas tank somewhere, which is really common on these trucks. Now this is the part that kind of sucks if you're like me and you're by yourself today, because I can't actually push down on the pedal while watching where the fluid leak's coming from. So I'm kind of going by what I see right now. It almost looks like that right on the back side of this union right here, that's where a lot of the rust is. It looks like it's actually dripping right behind this little retainer right here. So we're going to use that as our reference point for now. You'll see what I mean here in a minute. Now I'm on the other side of the gas tank. I'm pretty much underneath the driver's door, looking at it from underneath. So what we have is a union right here where two pieces of brake line come together. So this section of line will go from this union to the union that we saw back there. So what we can do is take our tape measure and just get a rough estimate of how much line we're going to need. So I put the base of the tape measure up right around where the union is, and then just kind of ran it towards the camera so you guys can see what I'm doing. And we're right somewhere around 50 some odd inches. Actually a little bit less than 50. It's probably about 4 feet. So we could just go out to AutoZone right now and buy the piece of line that we need. But I found it's better to inspect the rest of the lines before you go to the store. As you can see, we're up here toward the front now. So you've got this union right here, and you've got a length of line that runs down the frame right to our other union right here. And that thing isn't looking too good right there. So I think what we're going to be better off doing is just replacing this line as well, because it really wouldn't make any sense to replace that one and do the bleeding knowing that we have a problem right here too. So this kind of goes in with while you're there kind of deal, you know what I'm saying? But it doesn't stop there. I also want to check any of the other lines underneath the hood and anywhere else on the vehicle first. So there's not much signs to it. I mean, you can inspect the lines that go from the master cylinder to the ABS unit, and then from the ABS unit to the respective wheels. Just look for anything that might be kind of fucked up. You know what I mean? I don't know how well you guys can see that one. This is the one that comes from the ABS unit and goes to the left front wheel. You can see it's kind of fucked up. You can see it's kind of got a little bit of surface rust on there too. So it's something to keep in note. I mean, if it looks horrible like this, might be a good time to get it replaced while you're already here, you know what I'm saying? But we're gonna let that one ride for now. I guess the big concern is the line that's going to the back brakes. Now, how did I know what size brake line to get? Well, as you're going to see here, they have different size lines. They have different size lines coming from the ABS unit, going down to different unions, you know what I'm saying? An example I can show you for measuring the thickness of these is to take a 1/4 inch wrench, and you'll see like on this line right here, there's no movement, there's no slop. So we can assume that this line, which is one of the ones coming off of the ABS unit, is a 1/4 inch. Now if you go right below this and you do the same thing with your wrench, you're going to notice you got a little bit of wiggle in that thing. And that pretty much can confirm that this is a 3/16 inch line. So far with these older CK trucks, I've only seen the 1/4 inch and the 3/16 inch line. So those pretty much are the only two choices that you have. Okay, so here's where things get interesting. So you see this clip right here has a 13mm fastener holding this bracket in, and that also holds this line onto the frame. There are more of these behind the gas tank. Now what I'm going to do is a little bit unconventional, because I'm not pulling the gas tank out of this truck to do this repair. So, is to get this fastener out to be able to move this whole thing out so I can get my wrenches on this fitting and remove this side of the line from the fitting. I'm not really concerned with the rest of the clips that are on this line. So for you OCD guys who have to have it, you know, your way, you're more than welcome to remove the gas tank to do this. Oh shit, what the fuck did I just push? Uh-oh. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not about to wrestle out this heavy motherfucker just to replace a brake line. Fuck that. What's going on with this fucking camera? Damn, I hope I didn't lose all that footage. And how close were we for a rough estimate? Well, we're weighing here at about 94 inches. But I didn't go through the trouble of, you know, making these lines perfectly straight again. So it looks like 2 50-inch lengths is what we're going to need. This line is a 1/4 inch line. Oh fuck. Welcome to day 2. When I was going over the footage I got yesterday, had a problem with the camera and I missed some stuff, obviously. What you guys didn't see was me removing the bolt and taking that clip off. Then I went and disconnected each end of this line from their respective unions, and then I just fished this out, you know, from the front, out the front of the truck. So it's fucked up. Nothing I can do about it, you know what I mean? But I think if you watch me fishing the new one back in and putting the fittings on and putting the clamp back on, you guys will get the gist of what it took to get it out. And again, the reason that this came out was because this isn't the OE one, and there are no clamps holding this in place behind the gas tank. You know what I'm saying? Fucking sucks, I know, you know what I mean? I'm dealing with a camera that's kind of on its way out, you know what I'm saying? But I'm just doing what I can, you know what I mean? What happened was, I needed 100 inches from AutoZone, and they didn't have 100 inches. They had a 60 and a 51, which gives us, we're going to have some extra leftover meat here hanging off of this. I guess what technically I could do is cut this down a little bit and reflare it but we're not doing any of that shit. We're just going to take a little screwdriver and just kind of get this most of the sticker off of here. I don't really want to scratch up the protective coating. Used a razor blade on this before, but the razor kind of like wants to take a lot of the coating off. So I'm going to do this with this line and the other line that I bought too. So on the AutoZone lines, we have a 7/16 inch fitting. So we have 7/16 for the fitting itself. And then on our Union, we have a 9/16 or a 14 is what we used. It has a little bit of slop in it, but that's as close as I could get it. So we've got a couple choices here. We can run our line behind the gas tank now and then make our Union to the other line, but I think if we do that, we're kind of going to be in a world of shit. Problem is sometimes you gotta really wrench down on these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the two lines together first and then fish it in as an assembly like I did the old one, getting it out. You'll notice on these lines you've got a big fitting and a little fitting. I have no preference as to which one I use for either side. So what I'm going to do is put him in here. Well, I put this Union on, and I'm going to tighten this fitting down right now. And when I say I'm going to wrench on it, I mean I'm really going to wrench on it. I'm really going to wrench on it. You have no idea how tight you actually have to get these freaking things. And even that might not be enough. But we'll find out. So I'm going to take my other line and start threading him in. And again, I'm really throwing the coals to her now. So now for the really fun part, and by fun I mean sucks.
So it's easier to wrench them together outside of the truck rather than underneath.
The one intermediate fitting was in the frame rail, and it was kind of like almost where the gas, in between the gas tank and the frame was. You're going to have a hell of a time getting 2 wrenches up in it. For reference sake, what we used for this were these poly armor lines. These are the part numbers for the lines, and this is the part number of the fitting that was used. So I'm going to take a little bit of electrical tape. I'm just going to tape up this fitting a little bit, so that way it doesn't walk back as I'm guiding this line up here. There we go. So for what I'm going to do with this, because our line's a little bit longer than it's supposed to be, I'm going to attach it at the rear first, and I'll make up the slack on the front side, because I have from here till about right here to work to kind of bend it around and make it kind of fit, so to say. I'm going to take the super awesome electrical tape off of here. Start to screw this into place. And when I say I do it as tight as I can, I literally mean I put it on as tight as I can. Here's another look of the clip. I guess I've done this twice now. The brake line's going to clip into here, and then this is going to get bolted in, and then the wire harness is going to go back into this bigger section of the clip. So, thanks to AutoZone not having the specific links I need, what I need to do is I need to find a way to get this fitting to go into this Union right here, which is where this wrench is. So no real science to it. All I can do is I can bend this thing any way that I see fit. And you'll notice with every little bend, it gets a little bit shorter. Pull it down pretty far there. Come back up here. And then come back down here. So I think for now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to route it behind those two lines, these two right here. Take that original clip that I yanked off of here and just it looks like he pops into one of the, I think one of the evap lines. And then I'll just go into one of the other slots on there, I guess. I guess the most important thing is that you don't want the line like resting on something metal. So here's a little trick. Anywhere that the line might be rubbing or could potentially rub on something, what you can do is take a little piece of vacuum tubing and use your razor blade and make a nice slit in it, kind of like crack it in half. You can kind of just use it to wrap up the piece of line. I don't know how good you can see me doing this. You see that?
Yep.
So right in this section right here, where it seems like the line naturally wants to rub on this part of the frame right here, you go ahead and bap him right there. And if you were, really particular about things, like I'm not, you could take just a little zip tie and just
Secure it.
yeah, zip tie it in place. And this way, the actual line, it's not going to rub its metal on the metal of the frame. The tubing will do that, and that also works for, just say you wanted to anchor this line to, just say I wanted to do it to this line, which is actually what I'm going to do back here in the rear. It's so that you can, join two pieces of steel together without them rubbing. I don't know if you can see this back here. Well, what it is, it's another one of those clips like I had up there. It's got 4 lines in it. It looks like 2 are fuel lines, there's an evap line, and then there's the original brake line at the very end. And I'm not taking all that stuff apart just to put this line perfectly into place. So I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to cut a piece of this vacuum line off. Ain't got to be not crazy. 1.5 inches, 2-3 inches, whatever. I'm going to go ahead and just run this razor blade down her. Boom. Split its fucking nuts out of here. And then I can just secure that rubber piece to the line that's, conveniently right there. So he's not going to rub on anything. I was actually reading up on what some people said about doing this stuff, and there was actually some more or less arguments about actually taking the gas tank out and taking the OE line out and bending your new line exactly to the OE length, following all the OE bends. You know what I mean? I just don't think that most people that have a 15-year-old vehicle are going to be that particular. I read one thing where it was just like someone said that the line had to be exactly the same length as the OE line, for it to work. Obviously, that motherfucker never heard of Pascal's law, you know what I'm saying? Because you could run this line down and back up and back down and back up and back down and back up and back down, and then tied in the rear brakes. And as long as your system was full of fluid and all the air was out, they'd work exactly the same. So what's a couple other inches, you know what I'm saying? And the only thing we have left is to bleed the rear brakes. But we'll do that tomorrow. Where we left off yesterday, the line has been replaced. We poured some fluid in the master cylinder. Now we're going to move ahead to bleeding the brakes. You guys know how my feelings on those one-man brake bleeder kits. They're garbage. There's no replacement for an assistant to help you bleed the brakes. That's what we're going to do right now. So the line that we just replaced is now full of air, and we want to bleed all that air out of the system. I guess I'll start off by saying there's a lot of different ways you can do this. But what I do, I'm going to bleed it at this wheel cylinder right here and at the wheel cylinder on the other rear wheel. So this thing's been sitting on here probably 15 years. I'm going to hose it down with some penetrating spray. So we hosed him down. We're going to hose down the other side when we get to it. And we'll let this thing work in for a minute or two. There's a lot of things that can determine the size of the bleeder valve on this wheel cylinder. And there's no way for me to say exactly what you're going to have on yours. On this one, I think it's 5/16. So what I'm going to try to do is just crack this thing loose before I start bleeding. It makes the process go a little bit smoother. So I'm just putting a wrench on a wrench, give me a little bit of leverage there. That motherfucker is TIT tight. That fucker ain't coming off of there. Now think about this for a second. We blew out a line to the back brakes behind the gas tank. And now we have a lot of air in the system. But we didn't actually get air back here to the rear wheels. In fact, the wheel cylinders are still full of fluid. And chances are, the lines that go into the wheel cylinders are still full of fluid. Remember, the leak's way upstream. So what we could also do instead is we can actually bleed the system at the line that goes into the wheel cylinder. So I've got a flare nut wrench on this line right here. I'm going to see if I can just bust her loose with my hands. Now you saw this line jiggle a little bit too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work this back and forth to kind of free the fitting from the line. And then I'm just going to snug it up a little bit. And when I go and bleed it, I'm just going to take an open end wrench because now there's not a lot of torque on it. And then I can just easily turn this a little bit and you'll see what happens when we actually go to bleed it. So our master cylinder's topped off. So what my assistant here is going to do is she's going to push and release the pedal 3 times, and on the 3rd time she's going to push it down and hold the pedal down, and you're going to see what happens when I open the bleeder from up here. Alright, go ahead.
Holding.
So you can see we're getting a steady stream of fluid out of this back wheel right here. We haven't really had any air bubbles. So what we're going to do is we're going to move to the other side and do the same thing. Hey, guess what? The bleeder valve broke off on this side. So we have no choice on this side but to bleed from the line. Now I already did the same thing where I cracked it loose with a flare nut wrench and then just tighten it up just a little bit so I can just use an open end, which makes the process of bleeding it a whole lot easier. Alright, go ahead.
Holding.
Did you hear that? That's the air that we're trying to get out of the system. So what we're going to do is we're going to repeat this process a couple times. We may even have to go from this wheel back over to the passenger side rear wheel and just keep doing that until there's no more of that hissing sound that comes out. And as the air is displaced from the system, she's going to feel the pedal get a lot harder, and she's going to tell me that, you know what I mean? Alright, so go ahead.
Holding.
Did you hear that? We got a lot of air that time. Go ahead and do it again.
Holding.
You can actually hear the brake components start to move now that the air is being displaced. And we're back to getting a little bit amount of fluid out of it too. Now, as you're doing this, you periodically want to check the master cylinder again. As you can see, our rear chamber's going down a lot. More of AutoZone's finest. Fill him back up. Now we're back at the passenger rear wheel, and we're just going to keep on repeating the process. Go ahead. Oh yeah. Like I said, this is where using the open end wrench really comes in handy.
Very hard pedals.
Very hard?
Holding.
There's another one that's all fluid. So once everything's done, I go back with the flare wrench, and that way I can really smash down on her, get her nice and tight. Because you're going to get a much better bite on that fitting with this as opposed to the open end wrench. And again, for my last tightening up here, I'm going to use the flare wrench, and that way I can really tighten it down. Just going to go ahead and top off the master cylinder one last time. Fill him up too. Yeah. But we do have one more thing to do.
What's that?
We're going to clean off the stuff from the back of the backing plates. So I've got some brake clean. Just going to hose her down a little bit. Now you might be saying, oh man, you do a really thorough job cleaning all this fluid off. I'm not doing it to really clean it off. I'm doing it because if the wheel looked like that over there, I would not be able to tell if there was a new leak, or maybe I didn't tighten down this fitting all the way. There'd be no way to tell. So, just a good habit to clean this shit off. I'm gonna spray off the other wheel too. Now let's just say, we'll do a scenario here where the line blew out on Sunday. We needed this truck for Monday morning. We went to AutoZone. They didn't have the right size line, so we improvised there. We get back here and we go to bleed it, and the little bleeder breaks off. Well, now you have a way to get around that, because chances are, who's going to have a wheel cylinder for this truck at Sunday night? You know what I'm saying? So hopefully this tip will save your bacon someday. Yeah, so everything's good. I can see the whole length down this frame. Everything's nice and dry. And we'll call this a wrap. But there's some other stuff I got to talk about too. There's a couple extra things I want to talk about since we're talking about brake lines and stuff. This is just a generic brake line. It's kind of similar to the one that we just put on, the poly armor stuff. I think this was from Napa. But this was put on 7 years, which is 100,000 miles ago. So we got 100,000 miles out of this $40 repair. You know what I mean? Some people say, oh no, you want to use stainless steel when you do this. Well, the cost of the stainless steel tubing is a lot more than 40 bucks, you know what I'm saying? And furthermore, there's no evidence to suggest that it is a lifetime component. You know what I mean? The same with that nickel, copper, iron crap that everybody talks about. It's kink proof. You can twist it around your finger without a flaring tool. I need to see proof that that's a lifetime repair before I justify spending the money on it. Because anything that you can spend 40 bucks on and last you 100,000 miles, that's okay in my book. You know what I'm saying? Especially in these times. You know what I mean? I guess another tip, since we're talking about this stuff, making lines and stuff, this was the exception and not the norm. Like I talked about with those newer style trucks, they usually have different size fittings on each end, and what you have to do is actually cut your line off of your old one and your new one and transfer your fittings over, and then re-flare the new line. You know what I'm saying? I was ready to bust this thing out today. You know what I'm saying? The flare kit. I showed this before in Brake Tools video. You know what I'm saying? I was ready to show this thing. I was really looking forward to it, but we didn't have to use it. And again, it's the exception. That's what I would suggest to anyone who's watching this kind of stuff and may find themselves someday making their own brake lines, is to practice now when you don't have a problem. The last thing that you want to do is have your truck basically have no brakes on a Sunday. You need the truck on a Monday, and then you've got to also learn how to fab up brake lines. You know, make your own flare ends. You know what I mean? So get up off your ass, turn off that stupid garbage on TV like Duck fucking Dynasty and all that retarded crap. Get yourself a piece of line from AutoZone and a tubing cutter, and practice making your flares and try to get them to match the machine flares that are on their lines. You know what I'm saying? Because it's better to learn that now than when it's emergency situation. You know what I'm saying? That's the truth though. Think about here. Who is open on Sundays? Nobody. You know what I mean? The thing about this is I already had some brake lines here, and that's because I just replaced one. I actually replaced one that went from a union up here over to the right front wheel. And by doing that, I also did the inspection, and so I bought some extra brake lines because I knew that failure was coming. This is the one that was leaking, and here was the hole, right? And really, to make the truck drivable, all we had to do was replace this length down to this union. But when you looked at the front side, I mean, it's just as rusted and corroded and fucked up. So it made sense to do them both in one shot. You know what I'm saying? Fuck that motherfucker. Now here's just something I just want to say. Like I said, recently I had to replace the line from a union up here to the right front wheel. The rear portion of the master cylinder lost all its fluid, and we did the same thing. We were filling up the front portion, and I was bleeding both front side brakes to get a hard pedal back. So think about what just happened here in the past two brake line jobs. We filled up the master cylinder several times and ended up bleeding all the fluid out. What did we actually just do? Well, we really did a complete brake fluid flush. That's why I don't think doing that shit on its own is ever necessary. They say that this stuff, this .3 lasts 2 years. Prove it. You know what I'm saying? The last time this truck ever had anything done with the fluid was in 2006. And ain't nothing happened. That's 7 years, you know what I'm saying? There was a tool that they got at my work, and it checked, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it checked like the pH level of the brake fluid, or a percentage of water in the brake fluid. So they have this fancy contraption, and you pop the cap off here and stick a test strip down in there, and then the machine would read the test strip and it would say, you know, fail, you know, and then the guy would run into the service area and say, this says your brake fluid is going to fail. That's fucking wrong and retarded, you know what I'm saying? Speaking about retarded, when I did some research to see if this has ever been covered before, I'm pleased to say that I actually watched the worst video on YouTube of all time. This was a video by Expert Village, who are far from experts on anything, and it said, how to change your brake fluid, how to repair a brake fluid leak. I encourage you guys to find this video and watch it, where some robot kid talks about some retarded shit about fixing a brake fluid leak, but actually didn't fix a fucking thing. The sad thing is that while that video has like almost 30,000 views, this thing will be lucky to break 3,000, you know what I'm saying? So fuck you, Expert Village, you know what I'm saying? Y'all suck. So anyway, this brake problem just popped up. It wasn't on the schedule to be done. And as I said earlier, I've been having some camera issues. And I've known it's been kind of acting a little goofy here and there, and I'm in need of an upgrade. However, as you can tell by the size of the screen you're watching, I'm not even HD capable yet, you know what I'm saying? So the way that this works is if I buy another camera that's HD capable, I also need the software to make HD videos because I'm way behind on the times when it comes to computers. The last thing I'm going to do is ask for donations or some bullshit Patreon garbage, you know what I'm saying, to get money from you guys, you know what I mean? Fuck you, Patreon, you know what I'm saying? I'll take care of it myself. So it's going to be a little while before I get this straightened out, but just hang in there. I got some other stuff coming in the meantime. It just sucks that some of these repairs are one-shot deals. You know what I mean? I only get one chance to film it and hope everything works out. You know what I mean? In this case, kind of fucked me, but what are you gonna do? Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging in there during these camera issues. You know what I'm saying? If you like what you see, you subscribe to my shit. The best part about doing this stuff in the grass, at least,
What?
it's when you have a piece of something like tubing and you set it down and then it's never seen from again.
It's never seen from again.
It's never seen from again.
I didn't think it'd be that interesting until it happened.
You think me getting hurt is interesting?
Semi.
Dude, I don't need ratings that bad. You know, usually I see shit I don't like, I just kind of ignore it, but that was horrible, man. Horrible. Experts in what? Experts in being retarded? You know what I'm saying? Okay, well here's the thing, you know what I mean? I go through great lengths trying to make my titles and descriptions as accurate as possible to the vehicle I'm showing. That was nothing, that was the most inaccurate thing in the world. You might as well say, Miley Cyrus was twerking on the Statue of Liberty or some shit, because that would have been more of the truth than what was actually shown in his video, dude. Dude, I'm telling you. I'm fucking telling you, dude. It was horrible.